Hello, everyone, and welcome into another edition of the Computer America Show. The holidays are fast approaching. I mean, it's only a matter of days until Computer America goes on their winter break. By the way, everyone out there who had not heard, December 23rd will be the final show that we have this year, and then we will be back with new live broadcast starting January 3rd. So, in the interim, we will be playing Best of Computer Americas, and yeah, check that out. But we'll be starting the show here in just a moment. So if you sit back and relax, we will start here in a matter of seconds. So here we go with Computer America and Derakhshani.
Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting live. It's America's longest-running national radio talk show on computers, Computer America. Hosted by national columnist Craig Crossman. Look for Craig's weekly column in your favorite newspaper. This show is being beamed nationwide at ComputerAmerica.com. Keep it here for technology news, computer products, guest interviews, and your phone calls. You're listening to Computer America. Computers run the world, and we run computers. Call us or send us an email to live@ComputerAmerica.com.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome into one of our final shows of the year. That's right. As I just told everyone in the pre-show, that mark your calendars, December 23rd will be the final show that Computer America does this year. And then we'll be back January 3rd, bright and early, really coming back with our CES coverage. And, the CES coverage will last quite a number of weeks, but then we will, we have it going. So with that being said, welcome into the Computer America Show. And what a show we have lined up for you, because it's all about computer graphics, computer, visual effects and things like that, as we have our graphics expert, Dariush here with us. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So before we actually jump into that, I just want everyone to know to head on over to ComputerAmerica.com. And if you haven't gotten the chance, we gave it a facelift about 3 weeks ago. Definitely go check that out if you had not, got a chance to see that. And there you will find the show notes for today's show, including links to any articles that we talk about, links to our guest website, links to really anything that we talk about here on the show. So if you're busy, if you don't want to write something down, or if you forget something, then we make it very, very convenient to find it, and we enjoy doing that for you. Also, there, while you're at Computer America, why not sign up for some free swag? And every Friday we are still giving away the Keys to Go keyboard from our friends over at Logitech. So, with that being said, and all the contests and rules and entry and all that kind of stuff can be found over at Computer America, right there on the bar, underneath the social media contest. So, with that being said, I think we're just going to jump right into this, and barring technical difficulties, which I don't foresee happening, I want to welcome once again onto the show. He is he's a correspondent. He's been with us for, oh goodness, I want to say about a year now, or maybe a little bit more than a year. But yeah, Derakhshani, he teaches, he does this for a living. He does special effects for lots of film projects and things like that. I mean, he's in it knee deep, day to day, and we definitely enjoy his opinion and definitely enjoy his expertise when we talk about all the one of the more complicated aspects of technology. Because you can talk about Bluetooth speakers all you want, but graphics they're driving a lot more than just computer games. So although we do talk about computer games, but so help me welcome back on the show, Derakhshani. Dariush, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you doing?
Doing well, and that might be my volume that's a little low, or it might be yours. I'm not sure.
Very good.
Okay, well,
Who
yeah.
knows? Technology always there's something to figure out, right?
Absolutely. So you might be a little bit low. I don't know if you need to get close to your microphone or turn your microphone up a little bit, but okay. But no, you sound clear otherwise, so we're gonna count that as a win. All right,
Excellent. how's this sounding?
Much better. Very very good. And I think yeah, and we can definitely make that work. So yeah, and like I said, welcome on the show. Glad to have you here. And so I just want to say, what's been up with you? What have other than the holidays, which I'm sure are hectic for everyone? How's it going with you?
Going pretty well. Just finished up school, um, teaching some classes, so they're finishing up and doing some grading right now before I figure out what I'm going to get myself for the holidays.
What you're gonna get yourself for the holidays? Well, the answer is probably a better computer. Well, that's what was on my list. But yeah, no, it's knowing what to get yourself, and I ran into this problem with friends. I run into it myself. If you and actually, I just went to go get my hair cut, and my barber, she was just I told her I was into technology, and she started asking me all these questions about technology, and it's like when it comes right down to it, the average person, I do this 5 days a week. You do it as a passion, as a hobby, and you, of course, try to keep up to date for your job. But, for the everyday person out there, even something as simple as what's the best cell phone or, anything else, that's, very, very superficial compared to the latest in graphics cards, the great, the latest in technology, the latest programs that you can use. I mean, it's pretty hard to keep up out there when it comes to, knowing what to buy for the holidays, right?
Absolutely. I've been racking my brain for the last couple of weeks figuring out what's the best cell phone and cell phone plan I can get my 10-year-old son without breaking the bank. And it's just there's so many options. There's so many choices out there with technology. It's just the amount of things you can do. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I especially when I go into my I should say biannual upgrade for my computers, then just trying to figure out what motherboard, what chip, what memory, all that kind of stuff. It can definitely be a little overwhelming, but fun.
But that's the fun part. That's the fun part for
Exactly.
us, and that's the daunting part for everyone else. Absolutely. So, yeah, and every time Dariush comes on, he picks a series of topics, and we have quite a number of topics here because they are very very cool. So, uh, we can either start, and again, I'll dealer's choice, but we can start with last minute holiday gift giving guide and just kind of know what to look for when you're looking for computers. We could do the CGI with Star Wars, and I believe we're also going to cover virtual reality and a new product from Adobe, and that should be a lot to talk about. So, dealer's choice. Where do you want to start?
Totally. Well, we're already on the topic of what to buy, what to get for the holidays.
Sure.
So let's jump in there. And my son was computer being sort of lagging, and things that we might do together is go down to the local fry store or even get on Amazon or Newegg and start looking for to beef up his computer. I don't want to get him, a brand new box because he already has what is it, a really nice NVIDIA Titan X card. So I want to
Nice.
build around that card. So we'll probably be looking at a new motherboard and a new Intel chip. So I'm always partial to the Asus brand of boards. And It's probably one of the first things I'd suggest is upgrading your main board, your memory, your storage is not already on SSD, that's the first thing to jump into, and that's one of the things I'm gonna get for myself is, an M.2 SSD card for my Asus motherboard for the boot drive because 'cause I'm running out of space on my little SATA SSD, and I figure why not get the M.2 card because the throughput's a lot faster. So hopefully troubles with, Windows 10 recognizing it as a direct driver on the hopefully I can just image off my Samsung drive onto the new drive, but we'll see. So that's one thing for me, and then probably a motherboard and some extra memory for my boys' system.
Okay, so
So
quite a few
the
things to break down there, and I think
yeah,
the first place that I want to start is and let's make this a little simple because I know everything we just said, talked about, but
sure, of
motherboard,
course.
absolutely, because this is very important that I know all this. But motherboard, and for anyone out there who does not know, um, why should you not just go with the cheapest, or why should you just not go with the one that would match your processor? I mean, what is the purpose of a motherboard, and why why is it good to kind of go the extra effort to get a good one?
Absolutely. Great question, actually, Ben. Um, Basically, the main component of your system, and everything connects into your main board, and that's super important. The most bang you're going to get for your buck is going to be getting a good motherboard. And I would spend a little extra on getting some brands that I trust. And for me, I've been using Asus for a really good long time. I've had Gigabyte motherboards as well. Those are really both really good brands. I prefer to stay from some of the more budget brands because again, that's the central nervous system for your computer. And if you're going to get into, there's a lot of things you can do, but if you want a faster processor, you're probably also looking at a motherboard to go with that processor.
Ma-
That's the place where I'd spend probably $150, give or take, on doing that.
Makes a lot of sense. So now that is your hub, think of like a wheel with spokes coming out of it. That is the hub of your computer, and then everything else branches off from there. And the next thing you talked about, and this is the thing that if you have a traditional hard drive, spinning platters, what have you, a magnetic hard drive, obviously, like you just said, a solid state drive is going to be pound for pound, penny for penny, the best performance increase you can get for your system. As you mentioned.
Absolutely.
But real quick,
Absolutely.
you
Yeah, without
mentioned
a doubt. That should be the first thing you get to upgrade.
definitely. But real quick, you mentioned something that I've read about, I've heard about. I have not had a chance to upgrade. I'm still using a SATA SSD. M.2. Why is M.2 the new star child of memory, and why should people, like, maybe even if you already have an SSD, why is M.2 on the top of your list?
Well, for me, I have a SATA SSD, which is like a regular hard drive or platter hard drive, where it just plugs into the hard drive ports on your motherboard. Those are a lot faster than mechanical hard drives, and that's great. I want to go to M.2 is my SSD boot drive is pretty small, and I'm running out of room on it. And Windows 10 likes to metastasize and grow. So I was thinking about getting a larger drive, and I thought, well, I'll go an extra step and get the M.2. So, what is M.2? M.2 is basically a standard the the drive, the SSD, a lot faster bandwidth to the hard drive. So the motherboard. So basically, if you think of it like a highway, the M.2 gives you a lot more lanes on your highway to be able to move data back and forth between your uh, essentially your computer and what you're doing. Drive has a few less lanes, so the amount of data that goes back and forth is a little bit slower than a mechanical hard drive, without a doubt. Uh, the SATA SSDs are a little bit cheaper, a little bit easier to install. My motherboard has an M.2 slot already on it. So you want to make sure you have an M.2 slot. Otherwise, you can get a PCI card that will have your SSD on it. Those tend to be maybe twice as fast as far as memory throughput,
Hmm.
how fast the memory goes back and forth. So people, I would say, just get a regular SATA SSD and plug it into your regular on your computer. That's a lot easier to upgrade. If you're not gun shy and you're handy with your computer, you can go ahead and try the M.2 or the PCIe card approach faster. But you're getting a good brand name, and I always like the Samsung brands because brands may not give you the speed for the cost. So that would be my recommendation. That's where I'm going with the or why I'm going with the M.2.
One of those rare modern shoutouts for Samsung. They could definitely use it in the recent history with their other products. But no,
Yeah,
I think when people really get their hands in there, if they haven't messed with their computers before, they would be surprised at how plug and play a lot of things are. Just make sure you have everything plugged into the right slot, and Google is your friend. It's not as hard as a lot of people make it look when it comes to building a
absolutely.
computer. So,
Yeah, and that's the easiest upgrade to do. So if you're looking to do that to a system, get a nice SSD, a SATA based, and best bang for the buck. If you want to increase your actual raw processing speed and you want to get a new U, then that's looking at a new motherboard, a new CPU, and possibly also new memory as well. So that ends up being more time and more investment
right.
in your because all those things sort of go hand in hand. But your video card, your case, your power supply, most of those things. And one quick warning: if you are going to switch out your motherboard and your CPU, version of Windows you own, if you have a retail version, like the boxed version of Windows 10, you're fine. Uh, an OEM version of Windows that came with your computer, you would also have to buy a new license of Windows as
Mm,
well. About that much, the motherboard and the CPU. That's when the license with Windows really wants you to a new license. Again, unless you have a retail box version that you got from the store or over to the new equipment. I'm pretty sure.
right. Yeah. That's one of the I don't want to say odd things, but that's one of the things about Windows is like Windows 10. They made it very simple, but they also kind of made the signature instead of adding an email address like this email address is your account. I think they kind of take the like the unique serial keys or the unique identity keys to your motherboard, like to your hardware, and that's how
Right.
they kind of peg it to
Exactly.
you.
Yeah, exactly. There's a few different hardware identifiers. You like serial numbers, if you will. I don't say that they're exactly serial numbers, but they are unique numbers to your motherboard and to your CPU. So once you swap all that out and you put your hard drive back in and you boot into Windows, a license issue. Just a forewarning that upgrading that much make it tough for you to reuse your old Windows 10 OEM license that came with your machine. Again, retail should be fine.
Right. Retail should be fine. And so of course the other point, this is something that I was just talking to a friend the other day, and he when he tipped over, and he's kind of the curmudgeon when it comes to computers. Like he's always, I don't want to say budget, but he wants to get the best value for his, while still
Of
getting
course.
usable specs. And the tipping point for in my mind was he said get at least 32 gigs of RAM. And so, 16 bare minimum, 32 recommended, more than that if you can. What is a good amount of RAM or memory that one should try to look for in a computer?
That's a good question as well. I would say, pardon me. I would say for most users, 16 gig is going to be plenty. To be honest, I have 32 gigs of RAM on my workstation, but that's because I do a lot of graphics work and a lot of rendering, which requires that. But rarely will I, dip into more than 16 gig. Most casual users will be able to get away with 8 gig without much problem.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say just 16 will give you a nice, comfortable headroom. Uh, 32, spending the extra amount to get that much, I don't know if it's worth it for most users. I don't know if most games really use that much RAM. It's really when you're getting into heavy processing and a lot of multitasking that you're going to need more than 16 gigs. So I would say 16 gig for most users, most enthusiasts should be fine.
Okay, so yeah, so 8 minimum, 16 recommended, 32 if you want some headroom,
Yeah,
and then but of course more and more motherboards because and correct me if I'm wrong, please, but I believe it's the motherboard that kind of sets your upper limit for how much memory you can actually
right.
install.
Exactly. You want to be careful about the motherboard that you choose to be the type of memory, DDR3, DDR4, DDR5, whatever that speed rating is. Those chips may be different. So if you're thinking of upgrading your motherboard but keeping your memory DIMMs, your memory cards, they may not be compatible with the next generation of board that you get. Really careful when you select the type of motherboard. Chances are, if you're moving up a generation in your chipset, that you'll get new memory as well. And that's what happened when I upgraded to Skylake from my previous generation. I had to get new memory, and that's when I went ahead and splurged to 32 gig on my main workstation.
Makes a lot of sense. And there are some things there that I don't know how much we want to get into, but it really is that part where the motherboard, of course, being the center of your wheel, and whatever that dictates in terms of what processor you can use, what graphics card, what everything is going to have to interface with your motherboard. So really keep an eye on that in particular. And then of course, you mentioned DDR3, 4, 5. There's like DDR, 3X or something. Like there's when it comes to memory, there's all different kinds of names, all different kinds of speeds and formats. I mean, you really have to be careful with RAM. But again, like you said, just make sure the letters match on the paper. And again, 8 minimum, 16 recommended, 32, you're good to go. Um, very very good advice. So yeah, and and again, all this if you let's say someone is hearing all this and they go, wow, that is so much more difficult than going to a box office, a Best Buy or what have you, and buying a pre-built computer. What would you say at least maybe some of your favorite places to shop? This is not an endorsement, we're not paid by anyone, but I know
Sure.
personally my favorite is and because I do kind of like building my own computers, I like to camp out on Newegg for like a month and just kind of the shell shocker
Yeah.
deals and try to piece it all together over time. But where would you recommend people go for computers? Boutiques or big box office, what have you,
For like a full on
for a full
computer,
on
yeah,
system? Yeah.
I would say um, you're probably looking at a HP or Alienware or a Dell. Those are really good machines. They they're not great for do-it-yourselfers like us. We
Hmm.
like to build our own machines. In that case, I go to Newegg and I go to Amazon. I do a lot of research online and figure out what would be the best build for me, and then I just look for the best prices on Amazon or Newegg.
Right.
But for go to a store, pick up a computer, bring the box home, plug it in and go. I've always had a lot of good experience with HP and Dell, certainly for the workstations that I've worked with, but also Alienware makes some good systems for gamers as well. Razer also makes some nice machines. So you just want to kind of take a look and see what your style is and what your budget is, and try to get the best pre-built machine that you can. When you go that route, especially with Dell, they sometimes use a lot of proprietary hardware, so it's very difficult to really upgrade those machines, past the couple of years that you have it. So, you kinda wanna choose, you wanna go the DIY route and have options, but put a lot of elbow grease and research into it, or if you want the ease of convenience, then you've got, anywhere between 18-month to 3-year lifespan on any box that you buy. After that time period, you're probably gonna buy another box.
Right. Yeah, and
And actually box, BOXX. also a pretty good computer in graphics. I don't know if they do a whole lot, but they also make some pretty nice workstations as well. So
Hmm.
it's really at that point, I would recommend not going to a store like a Best Buy necessarily. They have, a lot of decent brands, but I would probably stay online and check one of those. But
You
definitely,
you are in
I'm
good
sorry.
company because I think this year, with the whole Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and there's something called like Green Tuesday or something like that. Where people also, like 2 weeks later buy more gifts. Yeah, this is the trend. It tipped like 2 years ago, and it continues to tip that more and more people order their gifts and their systems online because again, you just feel safer knowing that you got a good price when you can look at everyone else's price side by side.
And if you're the type that doesn't wanna really get your hands dirty with the DIY work, you might even wanna consider a nice laptop as well. I mean, that gives you some options. You may not have the best, video system, but a lot of nice gamer, laptops, again, Alienware, MSI, make some systems with some pretty beefy GeForce gamer cards in there as well. You can always hook that up to a secondary, 4K 27-inch monitor. Got the option of picking it up and taking it somewhere.
Absolutely. Yeah, those laptops and we talked about this when Nvidia came out with them this year, but with the new architecture, the mobile version of the Nvidia cards at least, not talking about
Mhm.
AMD, in particular, but for Nvidia, they eliminated the differences between their mobile and their normal graphics cards. So, they may be like different format or something like that, but in terms of calling one like an M or a mobile, no, they're the same thing with the same power and all that good stuff. Laptops are not a bad
Well, they
route.
tried to. Yeah, the M versions, the mobile versions of all these cards tend to use as little as much as possible, and basically these things, the more electricity you run through them, the more power, the more juice you run through them, the faster they are. So the platform and I guess the chipset, the build of these, talking out of conjecture a little bit here, uh, I really would suspect that the laptop would be a little bit slower than the comparable desktop.
It would make sense because you're not towing around a 1600 watt power supply with your computer,
Exactly.
yeah, with your laptop. It
Yeah.
would only make sense.
Yeah,
Okay, so
you're
oh,
basically a desktop card could draw a couple of 100 watts easy, but if you have a laptop card drawing that much memory, your battery is gonna last minutes instead
right,
of hours.
absolutely. So, and before we jump off of the computer kind of buying thing, there was a
Mhm,
story that we did. I want to say yesterday. We had a little bit of time after our guest, and this came from and I know like in the arts, college settings really do also enjoy them, but I know in the arts and I use them for a couple of my classes for video editing and arts. Mac and MacBooks and just Mac or just Apple products are very favored by artists, and
mhm.
there's a number of reasons for that. They have a great number of suites just kind of built in, and everything kind of works. But there was an article that we did yesterday, and I kind of want to get your feeling on this. And I apologize, but I'm probably going to interrupt you in like 2 minutes because commercials and whatnot. But there's an article talking about an executive for an executive for Apple who is kind of heads over all the divisions. They've flat out said at this point, because we've kind of assumed, but we haven't really had a true admitting of it, that Apple is really neglecting their MacBook Pro, their Mac line, their Mac desktop. They aren't fleshing it out like they used to. They're really focusing on the iPhones, the Apple Watch, mobile, some tablets. Like they're really letting their PC division kind of just sit there, and they intermittently upgrade it, but it's not revolutionary. Like the best thing was the new MacBook, which was the new MacBook Pro, which was the only thing to come out of that line, and even that was kind of like it was very mellow reviews. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so I kind of want to get your opinion
You know,
on them kind of just taking their old flagship and going, we'll get around to it.
well, you
I
know,
actually, I
for
take
one
that
thing,
real quick. I take that right back. We're going to go to commercial break here in just a matter of seconds here. So we'll be right back with more Computer America after this. Or at least we would if our automation system hadn't just crashed. So you know what? I think we're going to talk right through it, and then we should no commercial break, folks. Lucky you. But things happen with
no,
our automation system. It just crashed completely. So Darius, I'm instead of interrupting you, I'm actually just going to let you go. Yeah,
yeah, sure,
Mac and
sure.
just letting their old flagship line kind of wither. What do you think?
Well, it's tough to say what Apple's going to do. They're so understandably tight-lipped about their plans. It's a really great conversation to have. I've read that maybe focusing more on their mobile operating systems as well, so that the OS X may become legacy at some point as well. So there's a lot of conjecture out there. One thing to really understand that people should keep in mind, um, is people expect a lot from Apple,
Mm-hmm.
and it may be unfair to some extent for sure that, why don't they revolutionize what they do, every year? And that's kind of a tough position to be in. That said, I love Apple products. I have a iPhone. My wife has a MacBook that used to be mine. I do love their hardware. They make exquisite crafted hardware. But the long and short of it is, and in my opinion, uh, they're not for me, and I'm not for them. The shelf life for Macs is low, in my opinion. I think the price premium is too high. Uh, the amount of hardware that you get out of these machines, to me, is not really that worthwhile. Um, the MacBook Pro itself is just a beautiful, beautiful machine.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to a lot of other laptops out there, I think you can get a mobile machine for the price, if not for even cheaper. That'll probably take you another 6 months to a year longer than a MacBook would. Um, but that's just where I come from. As far as desktops, I personally have given up on Mac desktops for a very long time. Again, I demand a lot for my machines, and I do a lot of professional 3D work on them, and Mac isn't really suited for that. They're great for graphic design, but I have a friend of mine. He does a lot of graphic design, a lot of motion animation, a lot of 2D work thing, and he has a MacBook Pro, the black garbage can ones. And when he first got it, he was over the moon. Later, and he runs his own business, it's starting to run a little long in the tooth. He's not able to really upgrade it and make it better. So he's looking at a whole new investment of getting a new, and he's starting to wonder if that really was worth going the Mac, the out a few years ago. Whereas, every couple of years I swap out a few things. I spend $800-900, and I'm back close to the cutting edge, and a couple of $1,000 to remain on that. So for me, it's really not a fair question, I guess, because I'm already firmly in the Windows 10 and the do-it-yourself route. But I think for somebody who price is not that important, I don't think you can beat a Mac for ease of use. Everything comes together, everything works together. They're really super high quality. Oh, it's tough to say. If you're a gamer,
Yeah.
I think you're in the PC world. If you're somebody who just wants a nice laptop to go around and you're okay swapping it out every couple of years, 2 to 3 years maybe. And I think MacBook is a great option.
Yeah, and your opinions, they aren't they aren't uncommon. They're very common on the internet, at least, that say that Apple, you know, overpriced. It comes up a lot. I think they're expensive for what they offer. Just like you said, that's a very common held belief. Like, I don't think you're going to be liable for that at all. But at the same time, anyone out there who says that Apple makes ugly computers, makes stupid computers, they're just playing fanboy. Apple does very, very,
Yeah.
cool computers, and they do look very, Johnny Ives, definitely does a lot of, very cool designs, very minimalist designs. I think a lot of people really like it, but like you said, they went the route of a very sealed case. I mean, they went with their all-in-ones before really anyone else did. The only thing that you could upgrade was like one memory slot. Like, you could go from like 16 to 32 gigs of RAM. Like, that's all you could do was upgrade the memory. You couldn't do anything else. And like you said, it's once it gets old in at least one aspect, like if the memory gets too low, if the hard drive gets too small, that's it. You're done. That computer is done. So um and so
Especially with the laptops.
yeah, yeah, and especially laptops. So, and again, that was kind of my question was, Apple, they're known for disrupting markets. I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me for them to focus on the multi-billion-dollar profit center that is the iPhone. I mean, they're the only one
Right,
making a
right.
profit on the smartphone. It makes sense that they'd focus on it. The Apple Watch, that's a whole nother conversation. But I'm
Right.
wondering when Apple, because they could, they are a very rich company. I'm wondering when they're
Mhm.
going to make something, kind of people excited for the MacBook again. Because they could do it.
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
they could do it.
They could. I mean, honestly, what I think should happen is that the Mac hardware literally as exquisite, and I don't say exquisite about any other hardware than I do about Apple. It is just exquisite. They they should port or they should bring OS X functionality over to PCs. I think they should get out of the hardware game
Hmm.
as far as desktop goes, because I think they enjoyed a really good cachet as being for professional designers, professional graphics, as well as students and educators and so on. But I think in the end, the profit margins aren't great with hardware.
Right.
I think understands that, and they are super shrewd. But if I was them, I would probably spin off the hardware and just take the OS X because people love OS X, and it is a really elegant operating system. It baffles me because I'm Windows through and through, so sometimes I'll get stuck in it, but an operating system. And if I were a betting man, I would say a lot of people that I know would love to see OS X on a box that they can build
Right.
themselves or do DIY. There's a lot of, I guess the movement is called Hackintosh, where
Yeah.
people get hardware and they make their own machine that is compliant with OS X and they're able to run OS X on it. But in the end, I think they should stay in the notebook, tablet, and phone markets. The desktop really, I think they should let that one go.
Yeah. And it wouldn't be too much of a stretch for them to do it at this point. I mean, again, they have flat out said that the most recent MacBook Pro, they actually had to pull engineers to get it out the door this year. They had to pull engineers from other divisions, including the all-in-one Mac that they have out there, for the desktop. Like, they pulled so many engineers and so many resources, and you think a company the size of Apple wouldn't have to do that, but it delayed other projects to the point where it's obviously not a priority to them. So I can see that, and
Yeah,
they're
and it makes sense to me too.
yeah, and there are small contingents out there of Linux users who definitely enjoy it, and Linux users will try to adapt the OS X, and they'll try to actually recreate the look, feel, and everything that there is to OS X in Linux just to get it to work. Just like you said, in Hackintosh,
Yeah,
it's
Linux is beautiful. Linux is, it's kind of a wild west in a lot of ways. The one two issues I have with Linux is that it's not terribly friendly, and the interface is not as elegant and as nice as Windows or an OS X. If Linux gets to that point, I've used a lot of at a lot of professional studios. I've used Linux machines, and they are rock solid. There's a lot you can do and not crash. Where Windows 10 is still at times it'll just things will drop out. It's not quite there yet,
Mhm.
where Windows 7 was. Um, think I think that's what Apple should do
Yeah.
is stay with OS X, but get out of the desktop
Okay. And again,
for what that's worth.
Apple probably isn't going to take advice from us. Apple has a tendency to, at least keep things on life support just so that it look like they don't fail. So
Right.
they have said that in their roadmap they're going to come out with more. We'll see what they have, but to hear you say that, and I think a lot of people out there kind of agree that, they haven't dazzled the PC market in a long time, and it doesn't look like they're trying to. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens
Right,
with Apple.
right. And yeah, it
Um,
is what it is. I would just wait and see.
Absolutely. So, but wow. Okay, so 40 minutes, and we just talked about one subject. We have a couple more here to to kind of go over,
Absolutely.
and let's talk about the most the most time pressing one because Star Wars Rogue One just came out. I want to say like a week or 2 weeks ago. I have yet to see it myself. I've actually heard good things. Like they said it was kind of kludgy in the middle, and the beginning and the end were amazing, but it got kind of complicated. Whatever. That's Star Wars, but they said that the
Right.
CGI was very, very good. And then you kind of look into the articles that they're writing about it, and they're saying this is CGI done well, and it scares people how well it's done. So,
Yeah.
you brought
Yeah.
up a topic of, I want to say like a face swap kind of deal, or like, a character actor who
Exactly. Yeah.
they completely CGI'd. What is going on with Rogue One, and why is it good slash scary to people?
Well, it raises a lot of sort of ethical questions when you're able to replace an actor with a digital. Um, Basically, and I'm going to keep this from being any sort of spoiler. The film has a character, I think, that was played by Peter Cushing in the original Star Wars, and this is about the Death Star, so he's a major character in this. And of course, Peter Cushing passed away a while ago. So what they did was they had a similar build actor, and they replaced either the face or the head of that actor with a digital representation of Peter Cushing and animated it. And they've done this before. They've done this with the late Paul Walker with the latest Fast and the
Yes,
Furious
they did.
film. They've done it with the latest Tron,
It wasn't a one
Benjamin
to
Button.
one, but they also did it with, of course, Patrick Stewart to make him look younger, and the other
Absolutely.
Ian McKellen, they made him look
Yeah.
younger, like not one to one, but they made him look like a younger version of himself, which is similar.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. They've done it in the Avengers Civil War with Captain America. It's common it's much more commonplace than it was just a few years ago. And the questions it raises are, should you be able to bring an actor back from the dead and be able to have them act in your film? What sort of questions does that bring up? Is Mr. Cushing's estate being compensated for this? What are the implications for actors moving forward? Will there be a time in 10, 15, 20 years where we just don't need that many actors because we're just generating them? And it all comes back to something we've talked about a few times before, and that's the notion of the uncanny valley.
Right.
That is basically the closer something gets, or the closer of a person gets to being real, um, becomes repulsive to us because it looks like a zombie. It looks like, there's no life in the eyes, and it just looks weird, and we get repulsed by it. stylized, like a Pixar cartoon, then we're much more forgiving.
Hmm.
But when people are really trying to make it look real, whether it's a robot or a character, human character in a film, look real, we have a very visceral reaction against it. So one of the things that I understand they've done in Rogue One very cleverly is to animate Peter Cushing's head, but try to keep as much of the eyes, because that is a real big dead giveaway between a simulated and a real person. But even then, knowing that Peter Cushing has passed away, I watched all of those scenes with a real critical eye. Again, I've been a VFX supervisor for 16, 17 years now. I was much more critical of it than I'm sure a lot of regular moviegoers are, and it didn't hold up to me at all. I think there was few things that didn't look real to me in the movement of the face and the musculature of how the face moves when the actor is talking. So those things quite um the look of the skin and how it's lit and how it's rendered was pretty remarkable, and that looked really quite good. Movement's got a ways to go. But I raise that because that's a topic we've talked about before, and I think it segues nicely to um, 3D's really becoming part of the everyday norm, and has something that
It's one of those things where, you know, there's already this disconnect in media, as I'm sure that you know, that when you see models on magazine covers, when you see people in movies, it's like, wow, look at and I don't whatever. Whenever you see
yeah,
Sarah
perfect.
Jessica Parker or whatever, I was like, should I say this? Whatever. But whenever you see X actress in a movie, it's like, wow, she looks so great. Look at that. It's like, well, that's right. That right there is $5 million in lighting, CGI touch-ups, makeup, costume, blah blah blah. Like it's millions of dollars to make someone look naturally amazing on film.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and
yeah,
you see that in print ads all the time. There's so much airbrushing and retouching. There's a lot that goes into that, and people should realize that real people don't look like that. That's an ideal that Hollywood and the ad industry puts out because that's attractive. You don't
right.
want to look at blemishes, but everybody's got blemishes. So you've got to take it with a grain of salt. New level of bringing people back that aren't around anymore, and what are those implications? Who's talking about this
Are we going
as
are we going to see a time when we have actors who are maybe the late great Gene Wilder, well, actually he might have been in Springtime for Hitler, like like you could put any
right?
actor into Springtime for Hitler. You could if the estate signs off on it, you could have any actor or actress who recently passed, and as a cash grab, put them in any kind of crappy movie that in life they would never want to be
Absolutely.
in. I mean, really, who
Absolutely.
owns your image after you die? And that's going to be a real argument you have eventually.
There's some of the unions like SAG and AFTRA are really thinking and talking and uh, making inroads in can and can't do. But I think we're within a generation of getting to the point where we'll be able to fool the people with digital simulations of people, as opposed to now where people will suspend their disbelief, but I think when pressed, people will be able to say, "Yeah, no, that person looks fake. That's CG."
Right.
But in a generation or so, I think a lot more people will find it difficult to. And I know there's a lot of nation, a lot of I think there have been some panels called in Washington D.C. to talk about this because this for all sorts of nefarious purposes as well. Some you know that's been a big thing lately. A lot of fake news has been sort of subverting people's opinions on the election and things like that. um, you see a video on TV, a public figure, burning the flag, for example. What if we see, a politician doing
That
that and
I
it's all
I
simulated
I
and
I
fake?
don't even have we don't have to go into kind of what ifs kind of thing. There was a video that went viral. It was by of all people, it was the Ellen DeGeneres show. There we go. And she
Mhm.
had her CGI people whip up a little clip of the Pope. He's sitting there praying at a praying at an altar, and then he kind of grabs the sheet and rips it out like that that parlor trick where you rip out the sheet and leave all the glass and dishes there.
Sure. Mhm.
And he does that kind of thing. He holds up the thing, and it's like that went viral because like the Pope just pulled a pretty cool trick. Check that out. And no, it was all CGI for a daytime talk show. Like it wasn't even like a Hollywood movie, and people shared it a couple million times. It happens.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And governments, I'm sure, are harnessing this sort of thing to be able to push agendas and stuff like that. So it's an interesting time for some ethical conversations about this sort of stuff, because there's a good side and a bad side to every technological advancement. And the stuff that's being done with digital humans is so amazing, so impressive. The artistry and the technology that goes into these.
Yeah.
There's so many talented people working on this kind of stuff, but there is just like a light side to the Force, there's a dark side as well.
Nice nice Star Wars tie in there. And yeah,
I
and of course, the good side is of course you get amazing movies, and maybe even one day you get movies with actors who may not be with us anymore, and you get to see them act once again on the big screen. You get to see them
yeah.
they recreate the voice, using software, and you hear their voice, you see their face, you see their movement, their action. I mean, you get to recreate experiences that, let's face it, other than having a duplicate, or someone kind of act like someone else, or hey, acting, whoever thought about that? But you would never get to see it again. So there are benefits, and then of course the other benefit in my mind, every year I always like I never buy it, but I always check out the latest NHL, NFL, the NBA game, like video games for the Xbox One and what have you, and they look realer and realer. And like I think the football, especially like when you're kind of doing like the quarterback view, it looks super real. And just like you said, within
Mhm.
a generation, within 10 years, 15, 20 years, it's these video games are going to look like real football games, are going to look like real basketball games, and it's going to be amazing.
That's a huge milestone. To be able to get that level of realism in a real-time render engine, so you can have a simulated human actually responding and reacting to somebody who's there live talking to it. So that I think is a pretty holy grail to get to.
Absolutely. So, with that being said, and I think we have time for one more topic, and we have two here. I'm going to let you choose A or B. And A is, of course, for Adobe Project Felix. I know that you are very much into 3D
Yeah.
modeling, 3D rendering. And B is, of course, virtual reality. It didn't take off in 2016 like everyone promised, but there are some available, and there are some that you can get your hands on right now. But people haven't made the purchase yet. So if they were going to, we have an article here and a discussion about which one you should probably jump into. So
Sure.
Adobe or VR, your choice.
Well, I'm gonna jump into the Adobe discussion, but I just want to say really quick, the VR thing. My stance is a wait and see attitude. I'm not gonna put money into that just yet.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of content, I think the Vive, HTC Vive, is probably the leader of the pack in terms of that. But to me, it's still a wait and see game. But talking about 3D and the stuff that we saw in Rogue One, it really is making CG. It's really making 3D a regular part of everyday life. We saw that with Photoshop when it came in and made digital editing just everybody photoshops something. Everybody is able to go in and manipulate images. Now they're rolling in application, Project Felix, that allows designers to be able to to use models and textures and lighting to really, so they're not just limited to grabbing 2D clip art or photos and cutting things out. If you take a look at the Project Felix homepage, there's a picture of a guitar sitting on a table.
Hmm.
Before, a designer was limited with what kind of image that they could table. But now with a 3D guitar, they'll be able to kind of put it into that atmosphere, make it look like it's really sitting on the table, customize it to the way they want. So it's still, within the professional realm, but I think this is a really big step in, democratizing CG out of the hands of hobbyists and professionals and getting it to the point where in, a handful of years, it's going to be, instead of getting a paint program or a photo editing program with your Mac or with your PC, uh, a 3D editing program. And I think,
Yeah. Yeah, it's very very cool, and and again we were kind of showing we're showing the Project Felix website here on the video portion, but and we see the guitar. The guitar, I mean, obviously it's a mock-up. I think personally the shadows are a little bit off, but you know,
yeah,
um,
it's not quite there yet
yeah,
for sure, but
it's
it's
not quite
a
there
big
yet.
step.
But when you see the demo video that they show, I mean, they made a true emphasis on the ease of use. Like all you do is kind of like you click, oh, I want glass, so you click glass and you kind of drag it onto the part of the object you want, and like it turns the whole thing into glass or plastic or wood or liquid or gold or fiber. I mean, like it seemed like it seemed like Photoshop, and I think at this point Photoshop is so user friendly. I have friends that through I don't know whatever means they get it, but they get the older versions of Photoshop, and they're just off to the races. Like they start using it. I mean, they made Project Felix look very user friendly.
Yeah, and it is. It definitely is. It still relies a lot on, bringing in stock objects, and, that guitar isn't something that was handmade inside of Felix necessarily, but it's a really good step in bringing 3D and CG work to a much, much wider audience of casual users, and I think we'll start seeing more of that now that this is really integrated with which like you said, everybody's got their hands on it already.
Absolutely, and the Creative Suite, I've been sticking with. We had Adobe on the show, and they were kind enough to give me the Master Suite for Master Suite 5. I've been using that, but I've been meaning to jump into the Creative Cloud because you know for whatever the monthly kind of subscription it is. Hey, now you're getting new programs as well as continuously updated old programs. So it seems like Adobe, the Cloud Suite, seems to be very, very convenient.
It's great. Yeah, I rely on it academically in my classes. I rely on it professionally as well in freelance and graphics work. So it's a cornerstone to what I do. I'm always almost on a daily basis. I use something from Adobe for sure. So I'm really very excited to see Project Felix. I'm very excited to see where it's going to go, and more importantly, how people are going to use it, what they do, and that's really what this is all about is empowering people to express themselves visually and to create things that even would surprise them and physically.
Yeah, no, it's and we saw that with Photoshop. We saw it with a lot of movie editors. I mean, even if you don't think there's a market for it, if you put it in people's hands and you let people start to use it, they're going to find uses for it. They're going to find ways to use it. And 3D modeling, same thing.
Absolutely,
So, okay, so yeah, we have about a
absolutely.
minute here to wrap up. Darius, what are you doing? I mean, I know CES is coming up. I don't know if you're going to do anything with CES, but uh, any plans for the coming weeks other than, of course, Christmas and all that good stuff?
Right. I think the holidays has put a bit of a break on all the kinds of things I'm looking at. I'm probably going to be reaching out in January to some of the hardware vendors, maybe video cards, do some reviews, maybe a laptop or two. Not entirely sure yet, but I'm going to take it easy for a little bit as the holidays approach.
No one blames you at all. So, with that being said, Darius, I want to say thank you so much for joining us. It was a very interesting conversation, and thank you for your input.
As
Very
always.
very interesting. And
Thank you.
yeah, I don't know when you're gonna be on, but I think it's sometime in late January. We look forward to it.
Believe so. Yeah.
All right.
Me
So
too. Thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure talking with you about this stuff.
perfect. Thank you so much. All right, and everyone have a great day. Thank you from Computer America. See you next time. Bye bye. All right, and everyone out there still watching the video portion, sorry about all that, but yeah, the music can come back another day. And I want to say thank you again to Derakhshani for joining us. Everyone out there, we will be back tomorrow, 4 to 5, yeah, 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern, as we have a whole nother program here with Computer America. And tomorrow, we have Mr. Gary Kay. He is with Tech 50 Plus. He is a senior editor. And, actually, he's like the CEO and founder of Tech 50 Plus. Check that out if you want any articles pertaining to a 50 and over lifestyle. And again, he's going to be with us here tomorrow. So, everyone out there, have a great day, and we'll see you then. Bye bye.